para presentar su informe. Tiene usted la palabra, señora Costello.
Thank you, Mr. President. Commissioner, members, this proposal is presented against the backdrop of rising poverty and deprivation across Europe as a result of the crisis. There are almost 120 million Europeans, or a quarter of our total population, at risk of poverty or social exclusion. Over 40 million suffer from extreme material deprivation. This means that they are unable to put a basic meal on the table every other day. Almost 6 million children do not have 2 pairs of shoes. Over 4 million people are homeless. Since 1987, the food distribution programme has been an important support for organisations in direct contact with people at the margins of society. 18 million people across 19 member states are benefiting from this programme this year. Ending the food distribution programme next December without a replacement European programme would pose a direct threat to food aid programmes in many member states. The proposal that we are considering here today envisages European support for national schemes that address poverty, which exists in all member states. But it would go beyond the food distribution programme by introducing the possibility for the distribution of basic material assistance. This could include, for example, starter packs for homeless people moving into a new home, or clothing and footwear for children. Also, it would introduce support for accompanying measures aimed at the social reintegration of end recipients that many of the organisations involved in food aid programmes already provide. I would like to thank and pay tribute to the shadow rapporteurs, colleagues in the Employment and Social Affairs Committee, as well as to the rapporteurs for opinions from the other committees. Over 500 amendments were initially tabled, and we managed to reach consensus on the vast majority of these, on issues such as the broader scope, developing the partnership principle, the definitions, mutual learning, co-financing, reducing the administrative burden on NGOs, and developing synergies with other EU policies in areas of food waste and healthy diet. Much of the discussion then in the Employment and Social Affairs Committee centred around 2 issues. Firstly, as rapporteur, I recommended that the proposed budget for Fead be at least the equivalent amount of the existing food programme, that is 3.5 billion, instead of the 2.5 billion which was proposed by the Commission. There was a clear majority in favour of this proposal at committee. There is a technical amendment tabled in this regard for plenary, which reflects the vote of the Social Affairs Committee, and I commend this amendment. Secondly, one of the central issues to emerge in the debate concerns the participation of member states, specifically whether the funding should be ring-fenced for the most deprived as originally proposed by the Commission, or alternatively if it should be reallocated to other EU programmes not necessarily targeting the most deprived. The Employment and Social Affairs Committee decided overwhelmingly to endorse the Commission's original proposal on this point. There are amendments from 2 political groups, ALDE and the Greens, proposing that if member states decide not to take part in the fund, that they may use the funding for other EU programmes. I would have strong concerns that these amendments, if approved, would set a dangerous precedent for the reallocation of funding between programmes. Also, they could delay the new fund taking effect as planned from January 2014, which is, by the way, one of the coldest and most difficult months of the year for the target group, and indeed could also delay the programming of the European Social Fund and ERDF from next year. I therefore cannot accept the amendments of ALDE and the Greens. It should be noted, members, that the responsibility and the obligation to combat poverty and social exclusion will remain with the member state. Fead is intended to complement national policies, not replace them. It is by no means an alternative or a substitute. But it would enable the European Union to continue to contribute towards alleviating some of the worst forms of poverty and social exclusion. Fead, in fact, would be the only EU instrument that specifically targets people who are at the margins of society, including people who are often well beyond the reach of ESF. In short, the Fund for European Aid to the Most Deprived is a sign of European solidarity with those hardest hit by the crisis. I urge members to endorse the report as adopted by the Employment and Social Affairs Committee, so that we will have a strong mandate to negotiate with Council and Commission and see Fead commence operations as planned from early next year. Thank you, Mr. President.
Gracias, Emer. El comisario Andor fija posición en nombre de la Comisión. Señor Andor, tiene usted la palabra.
Thank you very much, President, honourable members of the Parliament. The Commission is grateful for this House's support for the creation of a fund for European aid to the most deprived. Indeed, a